General Hospital spoilers indicate that Willow Tate may kidnap Wiley and Amelia Corinthos. Will Willow's last-ditch strategy leave Michael Corinthos reeling? Willow clearly suffers from major mental health difficulties. Willow has periods of clarity, but when she doesn't get her way, she reverts to her unbalanced, hysterical state. Willow seemed to grasp that she needs to demonstrate her stability 1 minute, and then she's flying off the handle again. Willow's conduct is inconsistent right now, which is a significant reason Michael is keeping her away from the kids. Even if Willow settles down and fights hard for visitation at the future court, there's no assurance she'll receive it. That is especially relevant given our knowledge that Jen Sidwell bribed the judge in this case. If Willow loses in court again, it could send her over the brink. Willow may think she is out of alternatives and decide to take dramatic measures to be with her children. Of course, Willow may not be able to wait until the October visitation hearing. Willow may become even more unglued and go to extremes well before her court appearance. In either case, we can envision Willow becoming desperate enough to kidnap Wiley and Amelia at some time. Willow has been denied the right to visit her children, thus leaving with Amelia and Wiley will be considered an abduction. That brings us to the numerous mentions of Isaiah Gannon's cabin and the repairs he is performing. Could that cabin become a stop for Willow once she kidnaps Wiley and Amelia? Willow might take the kids there while she attempts to regroup and decide out her next move. This could be a scenario in which Willow senses an opportunity and steals the children without a solid plan in place. Perhaps Isaiah might find Willow hiding on the farm Lucky Spencer gifted him and intercede. Isaiah could be the one to persuade Willow that, no matter how much she misses Amelia and Wiley, this is not the way to handle things. Willow, on the other hand, is determined to reintroduce herself into the lives of the children, and she may go to extreme lengths to accomplish this. That includes kidnapping, so we'll keep you updated on any snatching news that comes up. According to General Hospital teasers, Willow and Michael Corinthos are on the verge of rekindling old feelings. With Drew Quartermain and Sasha Gilmore Corbin out of the picture, Drew abandoned at the altar and Sasha fled with Daisy Corinthos Gilmore, a weak moment might bring Willow and Michael back together, possibly creating a fresh bundle of happiness. But after all the treachery, are they still in love? Or will having a kid only complicate their lives? General Hospital spoilers: old flames flicker for Willow and Michael. Willow's breakup from Drew, following his falsehoods about Michael abandoning Wiley Corinthos and faking drug tests, has left her hurt, and fans online are drooling about a possible reconciliation with Michael. Michael, who has been free of Sasha's influence since her departure earlier this month, is warming up to Willow, especially after Curtis Ashford revealed Drew's affair with Nina Reeves. A shared moment of vulnerability, think late-night conversations at the Quartermain gatehouse where they used to live, might renew their romance, potentially leading to a new baby. Fans are divided. Will old love flourish, or is too much damage done? Spoilers. A weak moment could change everything. Willow and Michael may find themselves alone, reflecting on happier times with Wiley and Amelia Corinthos. Can't you see Willow, eyes watery, as Michael's delicate touch rekindles old feelings, hinting to a passionate slip that could lead to a pregnancy? Fan ideas abound, but we stay cautious since a baby may bind them together. But their trust is tenuous, and Willow is harboring a shocking secret. She is the baby napper. Will a moment of weakness unite or separate them? Some of us may believe Michael is too savvy to let Willow in so soon, but the way he's connecting the dots of Drew's actions, he may come to forgive Willow for being misled so easily, because he was too. General Hospital spoilers. Will a baby save or sink Willow and Michael? Michael and Willow's remaining bond is delicate. A potential third joint baby increases the danger of things imploding, since they felt compelled to return together, rather than giving themselves time to recover and see if they could find their way back. The house was too quiet. Michael had entered the nursery with a light knock, only to discover the cribs vacant and the mobile above Wiley's bed spinning lazily with no one beneath it. His chest clenched immediately. He called out Willow's name, initially out of concern rather than anger. But there was no response. A faint draft fluttered a note off the changing table, and Michael grabbed it up. His world spun. Willow wrote it. She hadn't brought much, just a tiny bag, enough formula, and a few changes of clothes. She had planned this. That knowledge caused Michael to stagger back, as if the weight of it crushed him from within. This was not a frightened or impetuous moment. It was deliberate. It was the last resort. Willow had become increasingly uptight and closed off over the course of weeks. She had tried to conceal it, but Michael knew her too well. The stress of their broken marriage, his ongoing participation in ELQ and the aftermath of Sunny's upheaval, Drew's manipulations, and her own unresolved sorrow from her near-death experiences had all accumulated. But he never ever expected her to do this. Take the kids. Run. He was already on the phone, attempting to contact her, but it went directly to voicemail. Then he contacted Brooklyn, Carly, and Nina, though that was a long shot. Nobody had seen her. Fear began to turn into anger, then desperation. The lady he loved, the mother of his children, had departed into the night, leaving just a few handwritten words indicating that she needed time and was doing what she thought was right. Willow had always been considerate and soft-spoken, but underneath her delicate demeanor lurked a powerful, protecting spirit. She had faced cruelty, treachery, and even death, and she had survived. And now she was certain that fleeing was the only way to keep her children safe. That was what terrified Michael the most. Not that she had vanished, but that something had made her feel so confined, so unheard, that she saw this as her only alternative. Willow was driving down the back roads of upstate New York, attempting to keep her breathing steady and her hands tight on the wheel, as Michael sought to figure out where she had gone. Amelia was sleeping in the back seat, with only faint tiny snores as her protest. Wiley was also quiet, peering out the window with big, uncertain eyes. She had not informed them anything except that they were going on a holiday. But Wiley was astute. He could sense the stress. And eventually, he'd ask. She wasn't sure what she would say. She wasn't sure what she believed anymore. Just staying in Port Charles was crushing her. Attempting to coexist in a life full of power maneuvers, secrets, and silent betrayals was slowly killing her. Willow had tried everything. She asked Michael to prioritize the children, not just in words but in action, to lead a calm life free of the craziness of Sunny's world, Carly's drama, and Drew's quiet control. But Michael was Michael. His sense of duty was unwavering, and that stubborn streak had only grown stronger since he'd taken on more at ELQ and aligned himself with Drew's darker strategies. She felt as if she was losing him day after day. Worse, she was losing her sense of self. Her encounter with Curtis earlier that week stirred something in her. He was sitting at the bar alone, drinking something clear and bitter. Their chat began politely with small talk and smiles, but quickly evolved into something more serious. Curtis, it turned out, had blown up his own life yet again. Something about his repeated self-sabotage, and the fact that he acknowledged to making decisions out of fear and fury, struck a chord. Willow saw herself rather than just hearing his words. The same motif. The same silent decline. She hadn't planned it, but by the time she left the pub, the seed had been planted. She drove aimlessly for hours that night, simply thinking, imagining what life may be like somewhere else. A little town, a new identity, a fresh start. No bodyguards. No court fights. There are no looming threats. Just a garden. A school. A space where she could breathe. Now, as she stopped for petrol in a small town she couldn't even pronounce, she felt the whole weight of her decision fall on her chest. It was not freedom. It was terror. But she was in too deep to turn back. And turning back would entail explaining why she had left in the first place. It would imply relinquishing control again. Meanwhile, Michael was not waiting quietly. He contacted Diane and sought emergency assistance. It didn't matter if Willow had custody. What she had done could be considered parental kidnapping. And if she crossed state boundaries without informing him, things could become messy legally. But even as he went through the motions, something inside him warned him not to go full assault. He knew Willow. She would not harm Wiley or Amelia. She was not attempting to punish him. Still, it didn't soften the blow. He felt betrayed. But more than that, he felt humiliated. Because he knew she'd warned him. She'd repeatedly implored him to listen, to slow down, and to quit putting his family's heritage ahead of his children's serenity. And he had not heard her. Not really. He reached out to Drew primarily out of instinct. But for once Drew did not feed him strategy. Instead, Drew softly conceded that he may have pushed too hard. That his fixation with justice and control had resulted in deaths and broken relationships. Even Curtis, whom he'd attempted to assist, had recently admitted to driving away the only good thing in his life, Portia. These were not simply individual breakdowns. There was a pattern. They were all breaking the people they loved in the name of doing what was right. Michael sat with that reality, and then he got inside the automobile. He did not tell anyone where he was going. He just went with his instincts. He knew Willow. She knew where she could go to think and feel comfortable. He prayed he wasn't too late. It took him nearly a day to catch up with her. She was staying at a modest rural motel with peeling paint on the shutters and old neon signs humming in the dusk. He noticed her automobile first, parked awkwardly beneath a tree. And then he saw her, sitting on a seat near the edge of a field, Wiley curled beside her, his head on her lap. Michael approached slowly, not wanting to scare her. She turned before he could speak. Her eyes met his for a brief moment, and neither moved. It was not a scene from a film. It was raw, exhausted, and real. She appeared to have not slept. He probably appeared worse. "I knew you'd find me," she replied softly. "I had to," he responded. They talked. It's not about blame, threats, or legal custody. But what about fear? They were discussing how strained their relationship had grown. How difficult it was to pretend they were fine just because they loved each other. Michael said he didn't know how to fix things, but chasing power and trying to be the son his father desired had taken its toll on everyone. Willow cried. Not out of guilt but because of pure tiredness. She said she didn't mean to hurt him. That all she needed was a pause. A style of breathing. A means to protect their children from the emotional turmoil they couldn't always avoid. Michael did not ask her to come home right away. He asked her what she needed. That was the moment everything changed. Not because everything was forgiven, but he eventually gave her room without expecting control in exchange. They stayed at the motel for a few more days, not as fugitives or adversaries. However, as parents we are striving to rebuild trust. Michael has a room next door. They took turns with the children. They ate takeout. They went for long walks and said things they had never said aloud in Port Charles. Eventually they returned. Not during a news conference. Not with a court order. But discreetly and with a plan. Co-parenting. Counseling. For the time being separation may be necessary, but with understanding. Port Charles had not changed. Drew was still manipulating. Curtis was still self-destructive. But Michael and Willow stopped pretending. They were learning how to stop running, not from each other, but from the versions of themselves that they no longer desired. And that was enough for now. Willow had spent many peaceful nights reflecting about the life she and Michael had once envisioned. The calm she tried to maintain had been slipping lately, especially when their gazes met for too long or Michael brushed her hand in passing and neither of them moved away quickly enough. It was as if the air surrounding them still retained the electricity that had existed. But time had passed and pain had transformed them both, loss, betrayal, secrets. They were no longer the folks who once murmured about eternity in candlelit rooms. Michael had become more guarded after the rupture with Drew, and the weight of his family's legacy was tugging at him. Running ELQ, attempting to protect his siblings, and witnessing Sonny self-destruct was enough to shatter even the strongest Corinthos. But it was Willow who bothered him the most. She had returned to herself after her illness, physically stronger, emotionally distant, but something within her had snapped. And now, every time she looked at him with a hint of sadness in her eyes, Michael wondered if they had actually completed their novel, or if the pages had simply been left blank for too long. They hadn't spoken about the night of the charity dinner, when champagne blurred borders and buried memories surfaced. Michael remembered Willow's fingertips lingering on his chest as she pinned his boutonniere, her gaze containing 1,000 unspoken regrets and a flash of desire. The music, the way her clothing clung to her figure, the tenderness of her laugh. All of it made Michael feel they could reclaim what they'd lost. But Willow had intervened before it got too far, saying that she couldn't undo the life they'd made around their children and their delicate calm. Still, the discomfort persisted. Willow's heart jumped and dropped in the same breath as she avoided the bathroom mirror, stroking her fingertips around her belly with distrust. She hadn't been keeping track as she should have. The timing of everything, the gala, her symptoms, the worry boiling beneath the surface, was pointing her toward a reality she didn't know how to confront. Pregnancy right now would be chaotic. Not just because she and Michael weren't formally together, but because it would compel them both to recognize that, despite everything, their relationship was far from over. It would break the delicate boundaries they had established for co-parenting and respectful attachment. Even worse, it may give them hope. Michael was still hurting from his recent altercations with Drew. Michael was left reeling after learning about Drew's behind-the-scenes manipulation and threats. Willow had kept him calm during the storm. He began spending more time at the gatehouse, pretending to see the kids but actually simply wanting to be close to her. Their chats grew deeper, the laughter became easier, and their silence, when it came, felt more like understanding than absence. Willow, however, realized that love was no longer sufficient. She'd witnessed what love without truth did to people. Look at Nina. Look at Carly. Even Sunny. All of them were pursuing ideals that crumbled under the weight of falsehood. Willow had created a world of control for her children, and she wasn't sure whether bringing a new life into it, especially one conceived in confusion, was fair. She pondered informing Michael. She picked up her phone many times before setting it down again. She imagined his face. Astonished, conflicted, and optimistic. That was the problem. Michael would like to think that meant they had another shot. And perhaps a part of her did too. However, they were not in a position to make heartfelt decisions. The dilemma kept her awake at night. Were they on the verge of starting over? Or were they about to experience another heartbreak? Michael too was haunted. He was tired of pretending. The business conflicts with Valentine, the emotional minefield around Sunny's actions, and the rupture with Drew had him questioning everything. But as he glanced at Willow, everything evaporated. It has always been like Wei. He remembered how she had stated he was her safe haven. It seemed paradoxical that the safest course of action could be to retain their distance. But he observed the changes in her, the exhaustion in her eyes, the way she grasped her stomach when she thought no one was looking, the silence that followed their intimate times. Michael wasn't sure if it was remorse or something else, but he had a terrible suspicion Willow was hiding something significant. The stress reached a peak one evening after supper with the children. Amelia had fallen asleep early, and Wiley was occupied with his dinosaur figures on the floor. Willow was washing the dishes when Michael volunteered to help, and their movements danced around each other in perfect harmony. He reached for a dish at the same time she did, and their hands came into contact. "Willow," he replied softly, almost whispering, "something has happened, hasn't it?" She froze, holding the platter in her hands. Her shoulders tightened before she put it down. "You could always read me too well," she whispered. He waited without pushing. Willow cleaned her hands and leaned against the counter, not sure where to begin. "I don't want to say anything until I know for sure," she replied, her gaze scanning his face. "But I'm late. And I've been feeling off." Michael's breath caught. "Do you think you might be pregnant?" She nodded and quickly glanced aside, as if terrified of his reaction. He took a step closer, careful not to crowd her, but unwilling to let her drift away again. "Willow, is it mine?" She looked up, her eyes filled with agony and confusion. There hasn't been anyone else. The air between them became electrified again, this time thick and packed with uncertainty. Michael nodded slowly. "Okay. Whatever it is, we will handle it. Together." Willow swiftly responded. "I don't want you to say that just because you feel responsible. I am afraid, Michael. What if we are drawn into this again and destroy everything we've battled to preserve?" He forcefully stated, "I'm not saying it because I feel responsible for our children, our peace, our sanity. I'm saying this because I still love you. I never stopped." She blinked, her eyes filled with tears. "We're not those people anymore." He agreed. "We are stronger now. And maybe that's why we have a chance." Willow didn't react, but the stillness between them was different now, less about avoidance, more about the gravity of a decision that would change everything. The days after were stressful. She finally took the test, and when the results confirmed her worries, she sank down on the bed, hands caressing her tummy. The future felt like a faraway thunderstorm, inevitable and unpredictable. But there was also warmth and liveliness. When she told Michael, he sat down beside her, gently digesting the facts. He stretched for her hand without hesitation. "We'll make this work," he said. However, the news would not please everyone in Port Charles. Carly would want to know what this meant for Michael's future, especially since Drew was becoming increasingly erratic by the day. Nina too. May realized that the fragile balance she'd been maintaining with Willow is ready to break. And Sunny, assuming he noticed, would interpret Michael's next move as a threat to what little remained of their relationship. Whispers about the pregnancy spread first through Brooklyn, then Lois and finally Jocelyn. Everyone had an opinion. Some feared Michael and Willow were condemned to repeat their previous mistakes. Others interpreted it as fate giving them another chance. Willow, meanwhile, was divided between gratitude and terror. The life inside her reminded her that she still had hope, but every heartbeat reminded her of what she had to lose. If she truly exposed her heart and everything went wrong, could she endure another break? Michael was determined. He began taking time off, putting family above company. He communicated frankly with Wiley, slowly introducing the concept of a new brother. Willow regarded him with a mix of admiration and concern. He was all in, but would he still be if things were difficult? Their path forward was not going to be simple. There would be old scars to heal, forgiveness to earn, and trust to re-establish. For the time being, however, they had something real, something new. Only time will tell whether it leads to another happily ever after or another heartbreak. However, for the first time in a long time, they were both willing to take the risk of falling.